Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Human mechanic rescues a paralyzed alien cat, but then the unthinkable happens. The freighter was dead. Tomas Reed stood in the gaping airlock of the drifting vessel, staring into its hollow insides as dust motes danced in his flashlight beam. The ship, once named Celestine Dawn, was nothing more than a rotting carcass spinning quietly through the dark above the storm belt of Gastronine, a forgotten ghost buried in a tangle of orbital debris. He moved carefully, boots clanging softly against cold steel, his breath audible inside the helmet. This was what he did, find things no one else would risk chasing. He'd salvaged burned-out reactors, half-fused AI cores, even an experimental cloaking rig buried in a junk belt outside the keel verge. But this felt different. Something pulled him here, something quiet and deep he couldn't explain, the interior mire of oxidized fluids and old suffering. He passed shattered bulkheads, cables like torn veins hanging from the ceiling, and then the ping. His scanner caught it, weak, organic, faint enough to be missed by larger search ships. But not him, not Tomas. He followed it into the cargo chamber, half-collapsed and bathed in failing emergency lights. What he saw stole the breath from his lungs. A massive form lay crumpled in the corner, surrounded by broken crates and half-fused restraints. It was a tiger, at least, that's what it resembled. A sleek sinewy beast with a feline shape, fur as white as snow beneath moonlight, limbs longer than anything born of earth and stripes that shimmered with subtle prismatic hues. Its body was chained, anchored to the floor by restraints glowing with old alien tech. The fur around the shackles was raw, rubbed thin by movement long since abandoned. Its golden eyes opened. Tomas froze. The beast stared at him, not with fear, not with rage, but with the stillness of something too tired to feel either. "I'm not here to hurt you," Tomas whispered. Even though the vacuum meant nothing would carry, still the words felt right. And then a voice answered, not out loud, but in his mind. "Then why have you come?" Tomas's heart thudded against his ribs. "I took a step forward. To help if I can." The beast blinked slowly, as if unsure whether to believe him. "I was left here to rot. The galaxy forgot me. Why should you be different?" Tomas crouched beside the nearest restraint. The metal wasn't like anything human, it shimmered, pulsed slightly, as if it still breathed. He reached into his satchel and retrieved the laser scalpel. "Worth a try, because I don't like leaving broken things behind." There was silence, then, softly, "I am Kais." And Tomas, without quite knowing why, nodded solemnly. "Then let's get you out of here, Kais." Cutting the restraints proved harder than expected. The first one resisted everything, the laser scalpel sparked and hissed off its surface. The prongs of his magnetic pry tool bent against it like cheap aluminum. Kais didn't protest, didn't flinch, he simply watched, the gleam in his golden eyes growing dimmer by the hour. Tomas had to get creative. He dug through the deeper recesses of the wrecked ship, scavenging a fallen console fused to a strange auxiliary core. When he pried it open, he found a crystalline lattice, webbed with energy conduits, alien tech, dormant but intact. If he could hook it into his power matrix, maybe he could override the resonance field embedded in the shackles. Hours passed. The oxygen counter on his wrist kept blinking, but he ignored it. When he returned to Kais, his hands were trembling, knuckles bleeding from a slipped weld. The beast raised his head just slightly. "You should leave. You owe me nothing." Tomas snorted, his breath fogging the air. "I'm too stubborn for that." The device hummed to life, the crystalline engine pulsed once, and he aimed the emitter at the nearest shackle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then it cracked, a soft fracture like glass under pressure. The metal hissed and burst open in a flare of light. Kais shuddered, the freed limb twitching slightly before collapsing back to the floor. Tomas grinned. One down. Kais exhaled a sound like wind scraping across the void. "You are unlike the others. Tomas didn't respond. He moved to the next shackle, sweat dripping down his face, ignoring the way his fingers ached. When the second restraint gave, Kais let out a noise halfway between a growl and a sob. It startled Tomas. It wasn't pain, it was relief, exhaustion, freedom. By the time he broke the last chain, Kais was too weak to stand. His limbs spasmed and failed him, muscles atrophied, his back legs were limp, paralyzed. But his eyes never left Tomas's face. "You freed me, yet I cannot walk." Tomas nodded, sliding his tools back into his bag. "I've fixed worse." He slung his makeshift lifter beneath the beast's torso and braced the rig. The transport sled shuddered beneath the tiger's weight but held as he guided Kais toward the exit. The lights in the ship flickered, almost like a final breath before dying. As they passed the breach and entered his shuttle, Kais whispered again, "Why?" Tomas paused, looked down at the broken Titan beside him, because nobody else did, and then the doors sealed behind them, and they left the dead ship behind carrying with them something forgotten and something worth remembering. Tomas's outpost lay beneath the red cliffs of Lorien Scar, a place where wind carved the stone into shapes that looked like old ghosts. The homestead wasn't much, just a reinforced dome built around his workshop, a bank of solar arrays, and a hangar patched together with scrap metal from a dozen derelict cruisers. But it was quiet, it was his. And now it had a guest unlike any this planet had seen. Kais lay on a modified hover bed in the main hangar, curled awkwardly but alert, eyes watching everything, ears twitching at the hiss of every hydraulic door. His breathing had stabilized, the old chain wounds were healing, but the paralysis in his hind legs remained unmoved by time or rest. Every attempt to shift his weight ended with muscle tremors and a frustrated snarl. Tomas didn't stop working. He had rigged up a crude diagnostic scanner using his field medicate and a borrowed AI fragment that once ran a luxury ship spa system. It was clunky and slow, but it gave him something he could read. The spinal nerves had been burned, not cleanly severed, but scarred by energy pulses so precise they could only have been designed to wound and not to kill. "You were tortured," Tomas said quietly one night, more to himself than to Kais. The tiger didn't reply at first. Then, without lifting his head, he said, "They needed obedience. I gave them defiance." Tomas set down his soldering iron. "So they broke your body." Kais turned his head slightly, those haunting eyes glowing faintly beneath the hangar's low lights. "But not my spirit." Tomas smiled faintly. "Good, then we've got something to work with." He repurposed two-limb actuators from an old mining exosuit and a gyroscopic frame to build a skeletal harness, one that could read brain signals and translate them to motion. He spent nights welding the plates, programming the response time, and tuning the servos to mimic muscle resistance. The neural bridge was tricky, he had to modify the interface to interpret alien neuroelectric signatures. But by the third day, it was ready. Kais didn't ask questions when Tomas brought it over. He simply lay still as the humans strapped it to his spine, clamped the bracers around his legs, and activated the core with a quiet hum. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then one of Kais's legs twitched, the other followed. He snarled, not in anger but in surprise, as he pushed against the floor and lifted himself half upright. His claws scratched against the smooth metal, and his back legs gave out again, but not completely. Tomas dropped into a crouch beside him. "You moved." "I saw it." Kais was breathing hard. "Only a flicker, that's enough for now," Kais blinked. And in the brief silence, something strange passed between them, not warmth, not yet trust, but a recognition, the kind shared between two things the universe had tried and failed to discard. 4 days passed. Kais could stand now, albeit briefly. He took slow, stiff steps beneath the guidance of the exo frame, his balance improving each hour. The pain didn't vanish, but he bore it like a creature who had long since stopped expecting anything less. Tomas continued upgrading the system, adding adaptive resistance and integrating feedback loops that let Kais gradually regain fine control. Then, on the 5th morning, the sky changed. It began with the clouds halting their drift, the wind stopped mid-breath, the animals that occasionally skittered around the cliffs disappeared. And above them, silent and slow, 5 vessels broke the upper atmosphere. Tomas stared through the workshop's viewport, eyes narrowing. The ships were black and silver, smooth and sharp-edged, moving with a kind of surgical precision, no markings, no calm signatures, nothing human. Kais limped beside him, gaze locked on the descending ships. "I know them," he growled. "They are watchers, instruments of the sovereigns, my jailers." The ships landed in perfect formation around the outpost, dust rising in coordinated spirals. Tomas stepped outside, pulse rifle holstered at his side, hand resting near the grip. Kais remained in the shadows, eyes glinting. From the lead ship descended a single figure, tall and elegant, clad in robes that shimmered like mist over a black lake. Her skin was smooth, silver, her face, hidden beneath a translucent helm. When she spoke, it wasn't with sound, it was with thought. "You have done what none dared." Tomas didn't flinch. "You mean, saving him?" The envoy tilted her head. "We did not chain him to kill him. We chained him to protect what was left." Kais was not only dangerous, he was uncontainable. Kais stepped forward. "And yet here I stand, broken and still unafraid." The envoy turned to him. "You should not have awakened. The stars do not forgive easily." Tomas crossed his arms. "Maybe the stars should learn some damn manners." A long silence followed. Then the envoy spoke again, "We are not here to destroy, we are here to witness." "Witness what?" Tomas asked. Kais's voice rumbled deep in his chest, the return of something they hoped would never rise again. The envoy nodded slowly. "We will watch, but the sky will not remain silent much longer." With that, she turned and ascended back into her ship. Moments later, all 5 vessels lifted without sound, vanishing into the clouds as suddenly as they had come. Tomas turned to Kais. "You think they'll be back?" Kais's eyes gleamed. "Only if they're afraid." Tomas grinned. "Good. Let them be." The nights grew longer after the visitors left, not by time but by weight. Tomas felt it in his chest whenever he stepped outside, the stars above still shone, but something behind them had shifted. The air held tension like a string stretched too far but not yet broken. Kais sensed it too. He had stopped sleeping what little he did and spent hours pacing in the dark, slowly and stiffly, as if every corner of the compound held ghosts he hadn't yet met. Tomas redoubled his work. The neural harness was stable now, but fragile. Each time Kais pushed too hard, it crackled and threatened to collapse under the strain of a body that had once carried stardust in its stride. It was clear that Kais's physical recovery had plateaued, his body had limits, but his mind hadn't. So Tomas began building something new. He called it the Memory Forge. It wasn't built for strength, it was built for remembrance, for connection. Using recovered fragments from Kais's former restraints, Tomas reverse-engineered a data interface meant to access what remained of Kais's neural imprint, not to control him, never that, but to map his memory to understand what he had once been. The first time they activated it, Kais's eyes flared so bright the lights flickered. Tomas staggered back as a wave of sensation hit him, images, sounds, feelings not his own, burning sky, a field of glass, other beings like Kais running alongside him under a sky veined with lightning and auroras. Then the image changed, chaos, fire chains, 1,000 voices crying out, the sovereigns watching in silence. Kais collapsed afterward, his whole body shaking, his breath ragged. "They feared us because we chose not to be their weapons." Tomas sat beside him, wiping the sweat from his brow. "They feared your choice." Kais blinked slowly. "They didn't expect mercy from a creature that could tear stars apart." "Is that what you did?" Tomas asked. Kais didn't answer immediately, he gazed up at the sky through the broken dome window. "I was meant to be their sword. I became their shame." Tomas put a hand gently on Kais's shoulder, the muscles beneath trembling but unbowed. I think that's exactly what makes you worth saving. Later that night, Tomas stood alone outside, watching the stars ripple with faint, unnatural movement. He didn't know if it was an atmospheric disturbance or something else, but deep down he knew something had seen the forge activate, and it was on its way. The first strike came without sound, a flash so bright it turned night to day, erupted over the cliffs, and then a pillar of light fell from the sky like a blade. It slammed into the edge of the outpost, reducing the solar arrays to slag. The tremor knocked Tomas to the ground, tools scattering across the hangar floor. Kais rose with a snarl, his neural harness flaring to life. The strike had not been a warning, it was an opening move. They've come, Tomas said, heart racing. Kais's eyes blazed, and they brought fire. The sky opened as 3 ships dropped through the atmosphere, sleeker than the first 5, their edges glowing with weapon signatures. These weren't watchers, these were enforcers. Tomas rushed to the old turret system he had never thought he'd need. The platform sputtered online, targeting the nearest ship as it hovered in a slow circle above the compound. He fired, twin plasma bursts slammed into its shields, forcing it higher, out of range. Inside the hangar, Kais lowered into a crouch, claws extended. His body still ached, still shook, but something else burned inside him now, a memory reignited, a purpose reclaimed. He stepped into the light, and the wolves of metal above hesitated. Tomas ran to his side. What are they doing? They didn't expect me to stand. From the largest ship, a form descended, unarmored but wrapped in pure white flame. Its eyes glowed not with light but with absence. It looked at Kais and spoke. Its voice, neither deep nor loud, yet it shook the marrow. Return to silence, Kais didn't blink. You will not chain me again. The entity raised its hand, Tomas saw it, the way the shadows curled toward it, the way the ground cracked with its presence. It wasn't flesh, it was built, born of some godless forge designed to erase rather than punish. Kais leapt, his legs held, his body ignited not with fire but with light pulled from memory, from the forge, from the core of who he once was. He struck the creature midair, and the explosion sent both crashing into the ridge beyond the outpost. Tomas stumbled forward, jaw clenched. He didn't wait, he ran. And as he crossed the shattered terrain, heart pounding, he saw Kais rise from the smoke, blood in his fur, frame crackling but standing, not because of the harness, because of will, because he remembered how the entity stood too, damaged. It turned toward Tomas, weapon forming in its hand, then it stopped because Kais had stepped in front of the human, and his stripes were glowing bright, brighter than the stars. You forgot, he said. But I didn't. And the air shattered around them. The wind screamed across the ridge as the force of Kais's words shattered the stillness. The glowing entity, whatever it had once been, stumbled back from the blast of light, its body cracked in places now, as if Kais's presence had not merely hurt it, but broken something fundamental inside it. The ground beneath them steamed, warped by the pressure of unleashed willpower and ancient memory. Tomas had to shield his eyes as Kais advanced. Every step the albino tiger took was louder than thunder. His exo-harness sparked violently, circuits struggling to contain the raw power surging through him. But he wasn't relying on it anymore, the technology was only a bridge now, not the legs carrying him forward. He was walking on his own. The other 2 enforcer ships hovered just beyond the cliffs, hesitating. Tomas crouched behind the wreckage of a collapsed scaffold and activated what remained of the shield net. The battered system cast a flickering dome over the ridge, not enough to stop a full assault, but maybe, just maybe, enough to buy Kais the time he needed. You stand, the entity said, its voice jagged like static. That should not be possible. Kais's stripes burned with silver flame, his breath rising in mist. I was never yours to break, the creature lunged. It crossed the distance in an instant, blade-like limbs forming from energy and slicing toward Kais with unnatural precision. Kais ducked under the first strike, his claws dragging sparks from the stone as he pivoted with power and grace that belonged to another era. He struck with his shoulder, crashing into the entity and driving it backward with such force that the mountain shook. They rolled together, claw and blade colliding in flashes that split the air. Tomas sprinted through the debris, diving into the control shed. His hands flew over the console, rerouting power, overriding safety limits. He opened a line to the compound's long-dead orbital antenna and forced it to broadcast a pulse, the same kind of pulse the memory forge had triggered. Maybe they'd hear it again, maybe someone else would come. Outside, Kais roared, not with pain, but with life. His roar shook the air, shook the soul, and Tomas felt something within him fracture and then reassemble. Kais's body blurred as he moved faster now, lighter. His hind legs kicked with full power. The pain, long forgotten, burned away in the heat of reclaiming what was his. He tackled the entity midair, and their collision sent a shock wave through the ridge. The sky caught fire. The smoke hadn't cleared before the first shape descended from the sky, sleek, silent, luminous, a single ship, smaller than the others, not part of the sovereign fleet. Its edges glimmered with refracted light, as if it existed a few moments ahead of time. It hovered above the battlefield like an idea more than a machine, and then opened petals of silver, blooming outward. From within emerged another tiger, but not albino. Black and gold, with stripes of emerald fire, walking on air as if gravity had forgotten how to hold it. Kais turned at once, his ears twitching. Zirith, the new figure, bowed his head once. You live. Tomas stood frozen at the cliff's edge. Another one, another guardian. He looked from the gold-striped stranger to Kais. The resemblance was unmistakable, not of family, but of shared origin. They were made of the same legend. The golden tiger spoke again. We thought you lost. Some among us believed the sovereigns had erased you completely. Zirith shook his head slowly, still breathing hard, his body scorched but unbowed. They tried, but someone remembered me. He glanced at Tomas, whose fingers still gripped the ruined control panel. Zirith approached, his paws not quite touching the ground. There was reverence in his gaze. A human. Kais nodded. He found me, chained, broken, paralyzed, and he chose to help. Zirith studied Tomas for a moment that felt like a lifetime. Then he bowed, not mockingly, not condescendingly, but with true acknowledgement. Then he is star friend and under our protection from this breath to the last. Zirith stepped forward, limping again, the exhaustion catching up to him. The sovereigns will not stop here. His voice turned grim. They've already begun probing the memories of other fangs. Those of us who resisted, we feel them waking. Tomas cleared his throat, stepping down onto the scorched field. Then we don't wait, we hit them first. Both tigers turned to him. Zirith smiled, or something close to it. You speak like one of us. Kais looked up at the darkening sky. Stars slowly appearing in the gaps between the smoke, that's because he is. Above them, more streaks of light broke the atmosphere, more ships, but they weren't sovereign. They were wolves, panthers, dragons, beings like Kais, like Zirith, the forgotten were remembering, and they were coming home. Night fell heavy across Lorien's scar, but the stars above were no longer silent. The rift that once held Kais captive had opened a floodgate. Now, from across systems forgotten by maps and memory, others came, beasts of living myth, each shaped by a different kind of rebellion, wolves cloaked in lightning, serpents woven from time, tigers born in flame, like Kais once chained and now free. The outpost, Tomas's battered sanctuary, became the gathering place for something that hadn't existed in centuries, unity. The sovereigns knew, and they moved. From the black edges of the system, a fortress ship came into view, the Adjudicator, its silhouette blotting out stars. Where the enforcers were precise, this thing was ruin incarnate. It didn't threaten, it promised. Its gravity distorted the valley, cracking stones beneath Tomas's boots, pulling at metal like it hungered. The leader aboard did not arrive cloaked in mystery, it descended alone in a throne of dark light, arms made of crystallized gravity, a face masked in mirrored obsidian. It landed in silence before the Valley of Beasts. "I am Deliverant Varen," it said. "Final voice of the sovereigns and the last mercy your kind will know." The earth went still. Tillus limped forward, bruised but unbroken. He no longer relied on the exo-frame, he walked without it now, not with strength, but with something deeper, conviction. "I was born from your hands," Tillus said, his voice echoing from within and beyond. "You carved obedience into my bones. You called it purpose." Varen did not blink. "You are a failed instrument." Kais said, "I was your mirror. You feared what I reflected." Zareth stepped beside him. Then another beast, and another, until the valley brimmed with creatures once hunted, now armed with something greater than vengeance, truth. Tomas stood among them, armor scorched from the last skirmish, pulse gun on his back, welding torch still in his belt. He didn't glow, he didn't tower, but when he spoke, the wind seemed to still just long enough to listen. "You wanted a tool," Tomas said, "but you built a heart, and no machine can erase that." Varen rose slowly from the throne, then fell with it. The battle that followed was not a battle, it was history being rewritten. Kais surged forward with a roar that cracked the sky, his body limned in argent flame. The sovereign's forces fell like ash in his wake. Zareth danced through plasma fields, his claws cutting gravity anchors from the enemy's command lines. The valley trembled under the collision of beings too old to forget and too furious to forgive. Tomas fought too, not with fury, but with precision. He rerouted power from fallen drones into the shield net, stabilized the broken targeting relay, and triggered a chain reactor detonation beneath the Sovereign's forward dropship. His mind was a weapon more potent than any blade. And then Kais met Varen in the sky. They clashed in silence, not with blades, but with belief. And when it ended, it was not Kais who fell. The throne shattered, Varen vanished with a scream that echoed for miles before being swallowed by the wind, and the stars blinked almost in approval. Dawn crept over the broken land, soft and gold, painting the valley in warm light. Tomas sat atop a ridge, grease still on his hands, blood dried at his collar, a canister of lukewarm synth coffee at his side. Below him, creatures once hunted moved freely, their bodies casting long shadows over ground now theirs. The sovereigns had fled, not destroyed, not wiped away, but broken where it mattered, their certainty. Kais lay stretched beneath the tallest fragment of the outpost's broken spire, eyes closed, chest rising and falling slow and deep, his stripes no longer shimmering in pain. They pulsed softly, peaceful, steady. Tomas approached, his boots crunching on gravel. "You asleep?" Kais opened one golden eye. "Trying, you snore." A low rumble passed for a chuckle. "I used to snore across moons." Tomas sat beside him, watching the others, Zareth speaking with a beast that resembled a winged fox of light while smaller creatures curled beneath the shadow of the cliffs. "I think they'll follow you," Tomas said. "Even if they don't say it." Kais's gaze turned upward. "They don't need to follow me," he murmured. "They just need to remember they were never alone." A long silence followed, not awkward, but comfortable. Then Tomas nudged him with a boot. "So what now?" Kais rose, slow but steady, his form no longer towering with defiance but with calm, strength earned through scars, not dominance. "We rebuild. Not as weapons, not as watchers, but as guardians, not of the stars, but of each other." Tomas stood, cracking his neck, then extended a hand. "Then I better build you something bigger than a harness." Kais glanced down at him, a strange expression in his feline features.